Hey, homework prep, Unit 9, Day 3. We're talking about elimination now. But before we do, I want to throw you a little bone here with one of the word problems from the first side. And I want to concentrate on number 4 here because you might have a little bit of difficulty setting it up. First, you want to define your variables. So as you look through there, find your question mark. Find the word find. There's the question mark. It says, how many acres does a farmer need to plant of each crop? Okay, so when I see how many, I immediately think number of. Okay, number of what? Well, we're talking about acres and soybeans. So let's do that. Let's say that X is the number of acres of, corn and soybeans. So soybeans. And then let's say Y is the number of acres of corn, which is right there. Okay? All right, so it says the farmer grows soybeans on his 240-acre farm. So that means he only has 240 acres to plant soybeans and corn. So he can either do all soybeans, all corn, or a combination of both. So no matter how you mix it up, if you take all the acres of soybeans, X, and you take all the acres of corn, Y, and you add them together, it's going to have to be 240 acres. That, of course, is assuming he uses all of his farm, which he's going to. The next sentence says this year he wants to plant 80 more acres of soybeans than of corn. So that means that the soybeans is greater than the corn. So if we're going to make those two guys equal to one another, okay, so in other words, if I have X and I have Y, X is your soybeans, Y is your corn. If I want to make these equal, I'm going to have to make the corn bigger. How much bigger? 80 more. So this says that X, the number of acres of soybeans, is 80 more than the acres of corn. Okay. Now we have our equation set up. We're ready for substitution. As you look at those two equations, the one on the right is the one that has the isolated variable. So I'm going to go ahead and circle this guy. It says, what is X equal to? Well, X is equal to Y plus 80. I'm going to come over here to the other equation, and I'm going to replace that X with Y plus 80. So that sub-step is going to look like this. There's where the X used to be inside those parentheses, and what I'm going to replace it with is Y plus 80. Okay, now as I begin to simplify that left side, notice that there is no number in front of that parentheses. I can just drop those parentheses. And what I have here is, let's see, Y plus 80 plus Y equals 240. I have like terms here. I have one Y here and another Y there. Well, that's 2Y. So 2Y plus 80. All right. Now, that side is simplified. Now it's time to solve. Okay, so I'm going to start by subtracting away the 80. I get 2Y is equal to 160, I believe. Running out of room here. I divide by 2. That gives me Y is equal to, let's see, 160 cut in half is 80. So that's telling me that the number of acres of corn is 80. Okay, so I've got half of my answer. Now I want to find out what the X is, the number of soybeans. So I'll go back up to the equation that I circled there, the isolated variable one. Okay, and it's telling me that X equals Y plus 80. Well, I just found out that Y was 80. So I'm going to replace that Y with 80. And when I add those two 80s together, I get that the X, the acres of soybean, will be 160. And before I leave the problem, I write down my answer as an order of pair. 160, 80. All right, let's talk about the other side, the homework prep, the actual video here. And you'll notice at the top I have 3 different types of methods of solving. And we've done the first 2, and we're about to talk about the last one, elimination. Remember that when you want to do graphing, write this down with me, please, so you can get your credit. You're going to need to have 2 equations that are solved for Y. So you're looking for Y equals mx plus b and another Y equals mx plus b. And you guys may have to graph these either by hand, actually physically putting them on the graph and see where they cross, or you're going to give it to the calculator, do your second trace 5, enter, 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 and see where they cross. But in order for graphing to work, you got to make sure that both of the equations are solved for Y. With substitution in the middle, which we also called ISS, and we even talked about that it probably should be called ISSSS, you're looking for an isolated variable. So you're either looking for an x equals, or you're looking for a y equals. And if one of the equations gives you that, well then substitution's pretty much ready to go. You'll sub and then eventually solve like we did with the word problem just a moment ago. With our new method here, elimination, what we're going to be looking for is not slope-intercept form, and we're not going to be looking for an x equals or a y equals. What we're going to be looking for is standard form. We're going to be looking for two equations that are in the form ax plus by equals c. Notice that the x and the y are on the same side, the left side. A, B, and C are just numbers, so there'll be some other number on the right side. And as you look at our examples here, Roman numeral 1, elimination by addition, you can see that both of these examples are in this form. They are in the standard form. Both the x's and the y's on the left side, and there's some other number on the right side. But you can see that those columns, the x column, the y column, and then the other numbers on the other side of the equal sign, all line up, okay? And so you'll actually see why this is called elimination, and why it's called elimination by addition. As you look at your first example, what we're going to do is we're going to be adding up these columns. You guys can remember from grade school where you just kind of added up the tens column and then the ones and all that kind of stuff. It's the same idea. We're going to add up the x column, we're going to add up the y column, and eventually we're going to add up the numbers on the other side. Now, when we add up each one of these columns, you're going to see that one of these variables are going to be, quote unquote, eliminated. Okay? First column, x plus a negative x. Well, if x adds to another negative x, that gets eliminated. The x goes away. The second column, y plus y, well, that's 2y, so we'll write 2y on the bottom. Then there's your equal sign. 6 plus 8 equals 14. Okay? And you can see now we have a pretty simple equation to deal with. We divide away the 2, and y equals 7. That's pretty easy. Okay? We have half of what we need. We have the 7 for our y. We need to figure out the x. In order to figure that out, you just go back to the original equations. It doesn't matter which one you choose. You can either use the top one or the bottom one. Both of them are going to work. I'm going to use the top one because that's the one that doesn't have a negative in it. So the top one is x plus y equals 6. I just found out that y is 7. So I'll plug that in. In order to solve for that, I'll subtract that 7 away. And I end up with x is equal to negative 1. Okay? So my order pair, the point where those two lines cross is negative 1, 7. Now, before we do our check, just a reminder, we could have solved that in one of our other methods. We could have solved it by graphing, by solving for y. It really wouldn't have been that difficult. We could have also maybe solved that by substitution by maybe making an isolated variable, by either adding or subtracting an x and a y away. But you can see with the elimination that if they're already in this form, this requires very little work. So this is probably the best avenue, the best path to take. Okay, let's do our check. Remember what we're doing here. When we're doing our check, we're trying to figure out whether or not this order pair, this negative 1, 7, is actually on these lines. So when I write x plus y equals 6, and I plug in the negative value for x and the 7 for y, what I'm checking is to see whether or not this order pair is on the line. If I get a true statement like I just did, 6 equals 6, that's telling me that negative 1, 7 is on the line x plus y equals 6. As I check the second equation, negative x plus y equals 8. As I begin to plug in these values, so let's see, that's the opposite of negative 1 plus 7. The opposite of negative 1 is 1. So that's 8 equals 8. When I get another true statement, that says, well, that point is also on that line. Well, if you have two lines, and a point is on both lines, then that point has to be where those two lines cross. So we're finding the solution of the system. All right, second example. Okay, same thing. Let's add them up. Add up your columns. You'll see here that it's just kind of eyeballing here. That as you add up these columns, the y is the one that's going to be eliminated this time. So 4 plus 2 gives us 6x. The y's cancel out because one positive, one's negative. On the other side of the equal sign, we're going to get a 2. So 6x equals 2. Let's divide away that 6 to solve for x. Some of you guys are already thinking, wait, this is not going to be a whole number. That's okay. We're going to end up getting a fraction. I know, 2 divided by 6 is just 1 over 3, or 1/3. That is the first part of our order pair. You're saying, wait, Mr. G, are we going to get fractions? Sometimes you might. Okay. Now, we're going to have to go back and find our y. We have our x. Let's find our y. It doesn't matter which equation you choose. I'm going to choose the top one just because it doesn't have a minus in it. But each one will work. Okay, so I've got 4x plus 3y equals 1. This might get a little nasty, but you guys can hang in there. All right, let's see. 4 times 1/3 plus 3y equals 1. 4 times 1/3, just put the 4 over 1. You got 4 times 1 on top, 1 times 3 on the bottom. That's just 4/3. Okay. I want to solve for that y. I'm going to subtract away the 4/3. Okay. Well, if I take 1 and I take away 4/3, remember that 1 is a whole. 1 is just equal to 3/3. So if I take 4 away from 3, I'm going to get negative 1/3 over there. Okay. Divide away the 3. Notice that that 3 is on the bottom doing the dividing. So that's just like about multiplying by a third. What y is going to end up equaling is negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. 3 times 3 is 9. Negative 1/9. Okay. Pretty crazy. But nevertheless, don't get wrapped up in the fractions. Just get wrapped up on the strategy, the concept, okay? But I wanted you guys to see a little fractional work. All right, let's check our answers. We got 4x plus 3y equals 1. So let's try that. Do this with me. Remember, you got to do your checks to get your credit as well. I'll help you out with the fractional work. Okay. 4 times 1/3 is 4/3, we did a moment ago. 3 over 1 times negative 1/9, that's going to be negative 3 ninths. Well, that's just going to be negative 1/3. So we can reduce that down. Okay. 4/3 take away a third, that's 3/3. That's equal to 1. We're good. That one checked out. Next one. 2x minus 3y equals 1. So 2 times a third minus 3 times negative 1/9 equals 1. That'll give us 2/3 here. Over here, we're going to get a positive. Let's see, that's going to be 3 on top, 9 on the bottom. That's 1/3. 2 plus 1 gives us 3/3. Looky there. It worked out again. That's telling us that 1/3, negative 1/9 is on those two lines. It is the point where they intersect. Okay. Let's try one on your own. Now, I'm not going to be as mean as you think. I'm not going to give you one where it's going to have fractional values here for your first try. But solve this system. 2x plus 3y equals negative 7. Negative 2x plus 2y equals 2. Solve that system by elimination. Look at the first two as an example. Pause the video. Do it on your own. Try your check, and then here in a moment I'll come back by and we'll double check your answer. All right. Adding them up. You can see here that your x column is going to go away, positive 2, negative 2. Your y column, 3 plus 2, gives you 5y. On the other side, negative 7 plus 2, that's a tug of war. The negative 5, negative's going to win. You divide away your 5, and you get y is equal to negative 1. Okay, there's half of what we need. All right, let's plug it back in to find your x. Doesn't matter which one. I'm going to use, I'll use the top one. Okay, so 2x plus 3y equals negative 7. I'm going to replace that y with negative 1. Okay, so I get 2x minus 3 equals negative 7. Now it's time to solve. I'll add that 3 away. I get 2x is equal to negative 4. Divide my 2, and x is equal to negative 2. And there's the other part of my order pair. Hopefully, that's the same answer you got. Okay, let's check our answer. In other words, let's make sure that this answer is correct. And remember, you have to do this in order to get your credit. All right, so 2x plus 3y equals negative 7. I'm going to plug in a negative 2 for x and a negative 1 for y. All right, so that's negative 4. That's a minus 3. The negative 4 and the minus 3 are pulling in the same direction, so we get negative 7. That checks out. All right. Next one. Negative 2x plus 2y equals 2. Same thing. Plug in the negative 2 for x. Plug in the negative 1 for y. All right. Negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. 2 times negative 1 is a minus 2. And 4 minus 2 is 2. All right. That does confirm that that is, in fact, our answer. Thank you very much. I will see you guys in class. Hopefully, you guys will feel comfortable with this information, and we're going to go on to elimination by multiplication. All right. So be scared. Be very scared.